Hello and welcome to my first monthly Lunar Mansion Magic Guide, where we'll discuss opportunities to work Lunar Mansion magic over the next month, and I'll provide some examples of rituals that I hope will serve to inspire your own workings. This month, December 2021, has already begun, so I must begin by apologizing for the short notice on some of these mansion rituals. This is my first video and my first time to produce an astro magic guide like this, and I'm very much still in the learning process. So thank you for being understanding while I take these baby steps as a YouTuber and an astrologer. With that out of the way, let me get started. The goal of this project is to demonstrate the benefits and relative ease of working magic in the Lunar Mansion system and to equip you with everything you need to get started so you can be throwing spells around right away. So if any of this doesn't make sense to you at first, I have also produced a guide to Lunar Mansion magic on my website, which covers all the foundational material in detail. And all the resources mentioned in this video are linked in this presentation, which you can find in the description below this video. What is this project about? Why am I doing it? Well, this is a learning process for me. Sharing information deepens one's understanding of it, so we're learning about this fascinating form of astrological magic together. But why focus on lunar mansions? Well, the topic is a bit obscure, and I feel like that's intimidating to many practitioners that might enjoy working the system, and I hope to make it just a little more accessible. The mansion system is extremely versatile. There's mansions for everything, and accessible because you go through the entire lunar cycle every 28 days. And the lunar mansion system works first and foremost with the moon, which makes it goddess-centric magic. And I think the world could use as much goddess magic as it can get. So how will this work? So each month, I will provide a series of times where lunar mansion rituals can be performed in 3 time zones, US, EU, and AU, and examples of how I would go about crafting a ritual for selections from each time zone. And what about me? Will I actually be doing any of this magic? Yes, in many cases I will, if the mansions are workable in my location. However, it's not really a great idea to share information about your active workings with other people. So when I talk about it, I'll share information about the ritual and the tools, but not necessarily my targets or my petitions or things like that. And if I'm still doing these guides in a few months, I can report back on any successes or failures that have come to pass by then. Before we actually get into times and rituals, let me go over the Lunar Mansion system briefly, how it works, and how I come up with the times and the rituals for working this mansion magic. Lunar mansions are astrological magic, meaning that it is performed by invoking and conjuring celestial spirits and their ministering angels to petition them for favors at very specific times, which are determined by the position of the moon and the other planets. The lunar mansion system differs from traditional astrological magic in 2 important ways. First, the system is based on the 28-day orbit of the moon around the Earth, with a different spirit and different magical possibilities assigned to each day. The moon moves across the sky at a little less than 13 degrees per day, and in the tropical system of astrology, each slightly less than 13-degree arc across the 360 degrees of the sky is a different mansion. 360 degrees divided by 12.57 something something degrees equals 28 mansions. So every day the moon moves into a new mansion where it is said to be resting until the following day. The actual lunar mansion day, which is the time when the moon resides within a mansion, does not align to standard days. In fact, it's very different. It's different everywhere you are on Earth. So you're going to have to plug the chart details we're going to discuss into an astrological app and adjust the time so that the degree of the moon and any other relevant planets are equivalent to where they are in the charts I'm going to show you. And secondly, the system is primarily focused on the moon and is thus a highly developed form of goddess magic. And unfortunately, much of the discourse and the praxis for that matter around goddess magic is extremely simple. Moon phases, full moon, new moon, etc. All these are important considerations in magic, but it's just extremely oversimplified to say launch your spells on the full moon, do positive spells when waxing and negative spells when waning. And it's not that any of this isn't true. It is true in most cases, but it's just demonstrably inferior when it's compared to more complex astrological timing systems. The goddess can do better. And the Lunar Mansion system is proof. Now, if you're new to astrology or to lunar mansions specifically, it might be helpful to review my guide on the lunar mansion system before getting started, or refer back to it as you start planning your own workings. Links to this guide and all the other resources that I have mentioned in this video are in the resources section in the back of this presentation, linked in the description. Now, it's really important for me to take a minute to address a bit of a sticky point between the astro crowd and the magic crowd. Good electional astrology is often about recognizing the very, very best times for performing mundane or magical acts. From a practical standpoint, though, magic is most often about taking advantage of the time that you have available to stack the deck in your favor. This means that we often need to do magic when there isn't the perfect set of astrological conditions available. This is one of the reasons I like the lunar mansion system so much. The path of the moon designates times where she, the moon, can intercede with the rulers of those signs she's passing through and the fixed stars within the mansions without requiring a supporting aspect. Obviously, the more positive aspects and well placed sign rulers configured during a mansion ritual, the better the opportunity. But in a pinch, you're better off doing a ritual at an okay time than waiting for a long time for the perfect astrological condition. That's why I hesitate to call these times I'm going to share with you magical elections, because that might give the impression that these are great elections. Some are, but most are definitely not. However, none of these times are bad for doing magic. Each of these times follows the Advanced Mansion Election Guidelines in Warnock's Mansions of the Moon book. Usually, when people talk about making talismans, they mean the kind they're going to wear on their person and keep a really long time. But not all image magic is designed to be as enduring or as general purpose as that. The ancients talked about making images for all kinds of transitory purposes, for which a high quality talisman would likely be overkill. This is the logic I applied when seeking out these times for working lunar mansion magic. Not so much for creating lasting talismans, but for finding as many relatively decent opportunities for performing ritual magic as possible. So with all those details out of the way, we can finally get to the meat of this video, the good stuff: times and rituals for working lunar mansion magic in the month of December 2021. Let's dive in. Now, of course, the first month that I produce a mansion magic guide would be an astrologically difficult month. There are only so many good opportunities rather, to take advantage of in December, but competent mages find ways to work their magic even in challenging times, so we'll make the most of what's available. First, I will present all the ritual timings for all 3 time zones, and then I'll go into specifics of several mansions and how to design rituals which take advantage of those mansions' qualities given the current astrological configurations. So, first the times, then the ritual recommendations for several of the best opportunities in December. First up, let's review mansion magic timing for the EST time zone, where I live. If you live somewhere else in the US, most of these configurations will still be available to you, just at slightly different times. So adjust the time in your astrology app until the moon is at the same degree as this chart to get the approximate start time for your local region. EST friends, these are reasonably good opportunities for working lunar mansion magic in your time zone this month. And I'll pause on each of these slides so that you can freeze the video and make notes if you like. Now on to the EU. The time zone I selected was CEST, using Munich, Germany as the city where I cast the charts. Again, I'll pause for a few seconds. And finally, for the Aussies, I chose to cast these charts from Brisbane in honor of my friend Jeannie, who will probably humor me by watching these videos, but has philosophical issues with tropical lunar mansions and will almost certainly not be making use of them herself. Appreciate the love, Jeannie, but I understand. Here are the AEST times, and I'll pause here as well. Now the good part. So timing is only one half of astrological magic. That's the astro part, which leaves the other half to our interpretation, and that's the magic part. These are my recommendations for how to work these lunar mansions to provide you with some inspiration for designing your own rituals. You can ignore all of this stuff and do them however you like, but I know how intimidating it can be to try to craft a spell in an unfamiliar system, so I have attempted to make it as easy as possible for you to get started. First up, I selected the protection ritual on the second and third, depending on your time zone, which has the moon in the 18th lunar mansion of Al-Khalib, the heart of the scorpion, meaning Scorpio. The moon is in Scorpio at 17 degrees on the midheaven and conjunct Mars, which is exalted in Scorpio. The image of this mansion is an adder holding its tail above its head, which can be used for mostly destructive outcomes, but also protection, especially from physical harm. This raises an important question. Is protection magic malefica? And in an astrological context, I would say yes, because you use destructive forces to accomplish it, like Mars. And more importantly, because you situate electional charts to be as bad as possible in terms of configuring the chart so that it has aspects with malefics or malefics in bad houses, combust planets, and so on. To that end, Mars conjunct, or in one of the charts it's co-present, brings a big badass energy to the table for your protection. The ritual I'm recommending is fairly typical of Picatrix style image magic. All these rituals begin the same way. Orphichem to Luna, invocation of Luna, conjuration of the angel of the moon, which is Gabriel, and the lunar mansion spirit, then the petition and the ritual action. All of which is explained in detail in my guide to lunar mansions, which also includes a printable version of the entire ritual, so you might want to check that out. In this case, the action is simply engraving the image on a silver disc and suffumigating it with the smoke of martial herbs. In similar image magic rituals in the Picatrix, the advice is usually to bury it in the ground outside of the home you wish to protect, where this talismanic jewelry, you wear it. This is just to situate the effects of the magic through adjacency. Wearing it keeps it close to you, burying it close to the house applies it to the house. Though I would suggest maybe not turning this one into a wearable talisman because of how aggressive the Mars energy is. To take this idea a little further, though, I suggest that you add the step of placing the engraved disc in a spirit bottle or a bag or a box or whatever with martial herbs, iron filings, and razor blades or nails. You could then bury this, or you can keep it on your altar, and then you can reconsecrate it as the moon passes through this mansion each month. Some considerations for this ritual. The moon in Scorpio conjunct and exalted Mars in Scorpio is very powerful stuff. So be sure to take a cleansing salt bath, potentially in cool water, after performing this ritual. The sextile with Venus received by Saturn in its domicile restrains the intensity of this violent energy a bit. And the Mars square Jupiter potentially makes this time less favorable for legal protection. So like I said, think physical protection. Martial herbs include things like peppers, fresh, dried, seeds, any form. Also nettle or tobacco, agarwood, which is known as lignum aloes in the grimoires, sandalwood, cypress, and other odoriferous woods, according to Agrippa. Silver discs for carving the snake image on can be easily purchased through Amazon or at a local craft store, or Michael's or something like that. And just the outline of the snake will do. The mansion art from Warnock's Mansions of the Moon is shown on the right for inspiration, but it's a snake with its tail above its head. That's all you're trying to draw. This is the chart for this time in EST time zone. You can see in the red circle the details that you're trying to get to line up in your Astro app as you're situating this for yourself locally. Here is the chart for CEST and for AEST. So the second ritual, the second mansion that I've selected for this month is on December 6th and features the moon conjunct the ascendant in Capricorn in the 23rd lunar mansion, Saad Bulah, the fortune of the glutton. The image for this mansion is a cat with the head of a dog, which Warnock explains represents a situation which is untenable and about to burst apart at its seams. The waxing moon is bringing positive energy to bear at this time, though. So the traditional signification of this mansion, which is divorce and separation, is modified to the friendlier purpose of reconciling friends, which is one of the other uses that the Picatrix ascribes to this mansion. And as with all these rituals, we begin with the Orphic hymn to Luna, the invocation of Luna, the conjuration of the angel of the moon, Gabriel, and the lunar mansion spirit. Then the petition and the ritual action, which in this case is to create a paper talisman of the image, along with printing photos of the people that you wish to reconcile and placing the two photos facing each other within the folded paper talisman and placing that in a bottle or a bag or a box or whatever, along with mercurial and Venusian herbs. Should the working take more than a month to manifest, I also suggest reconsecrating it as the moon passes back through this mansion again. When you create a paper talisman, you have some options. You can either draw it freehand, or you can print out art like the one that was shown in the previous mansion ritual, and write your petition and the spirit's name across the image. The mansion indicates tension, great tension, so much so that it forces separation, which is why it can be used to cause divorce or to remove illnesses. Because the moon is waxing, though, this mansion will weaken divisions, such as a rift between two friends or allies. That's why we can treat this as a reconciliation spell. And we're repurposing a love spell for this reconciliation working, which is mentioned in the Picatrix, Book 1, Chapter 5. That's where we get the idea of taking two images and facing them together. Note that the ascendant and the midheaven, depending on which one of the, or ascendant or the midheaven, depending on which one of the elections you choose to use, the EST time, the CST time, or the AEST time, is approaching the moon within 5 degrees. And the next aspect for the moon is a conjunction with Venus. I think in the AEST version, this is actually already conjunct. So that sweetens this deal a little bit. The version of this mansion ritual with the moon on the MC is in the 10th house. So potentially that could be used for mending fences in professional situations instead. There is one good time for EST, which is this chart, and 2 good opportunities for CEST, which is, this is the morning chart, and there is also an afternoon chart where the moon is on the MC. My next selection occurs on the 7th of December and is one of the most positive mansions for prosperity, the famed Saad al-Saud, whose image is a woman breastfeeding. And this mansion is known for increase and prosperity when the moon is waxing, which it is. For this ritual, begin as with the other 2 rituals, with hymns, invocations, and conjurations, and then make a paper talisman of the image. Next, procure a representation of the source of prosperity which you wish to increase, a business card, for example. Fold the consecrated talisman around the card and place it in a bottle or bag, whatever, on your altar, filled with Saturnine herbs and stones. And again, each time the moon transits this mansion, be sure to reconsecrate it with a simple ritual and offering to the mansion spirit. For your consideration during this working, the waxing moon is an essential ingredient for this mansion's positive effects. Positive workings to increase merchandise and make a profit, or to have goodwill between husband and wife, which are mentioned in the Picatrix, should be done under a waxing moon like this one. And negative workings to destroy the money of allies and to not be able to meet with an official, to impose that upon your target, should be done under a waning moon. And a simple paper talisman would traditionally be sufficient in its own right, but I prefer to add embodiment to the ritual by performing physical actions. Thus, I recommend the Spirit Bottle Mojo Bag edition so that you can whisper the intention into the bag while adding pinches of herbs and so on after the conjuration and the petition to close out the ritual. This is the chart for EST and for CEST. And I'm sorry, Aussies, I could not find a suitable window for this mansion for you this month. Maybe next time. My final ritual recommendation for this month is for the 13th or 14th of December, depending on your time zone, in the third lunar mansion of Altharaya, the many little ones, whose image is a seated woman with her right hand above her head, where the waxing moon traverses the fiery final mansion of Aries. See, the lunar mansion cycle starts at Aries 0, just like the zodiac. 12.57-ish degrees of the sky, which physically begins the zodiac and is thus associated with the intense qualities of fiery beginnings. The second mansion of Aries offers us a chance to ebb those aggressive energies with a reconciliatory phase. But this, the third mansion, where the moon leaves Aries, is a synthesis of the qualities of the two prior mansions. It is a strong attractor of good things. As such, I've selected an apropos metaphor for attracting good things as the foundation of this ritual, a lodestone. In this ritual, pray, invoke, and conjure as with all the other mansion rituals, and fashion a paper talisman. Write your petition across it and the name of the spirit, Amixiel. And then, during the same window of time, paint the outline of a seated woman with her right hand over her head on the lodestone and suffumigate it while repeatedly conjuring the spirit, and then place it on the paper talisman. Finally, feed the talisman with iron filings while reciting your petition, and definitely reconsecrate this talisman each time the moon rests in the third mansion. I started my own version of this working last month under the same mansion, and the image to the right features the paper talisman I printed and the lodestone my wife painted with a silver paint pen while I did the invocations and suffumigations. Lodestones are one of my favorite ritual tools because the metaphor is so obvious and visceral. They attract metal, so it's perfect for prosperity magic. By making a talisman of sorts out of the lodestone, you give yourself something to reconsecrate each month when the moon returns to the third mansion, which is definitely recommended as this is an ongoing ritual. This is an ongoing outcome that we're seeking. And just a note, larger lodestones can be challenging to source, so order right away if you want to reproduce this ritual. And the Etsy store that I have linked here has large ones currently available. This is the chart for EST, CEST, and AEST. That wraps up the monthly Mansion Magic Guide for December 2021. There were, of course, some other interesting sounding mansion opportunities this month, such as rituals for friendship and love, favor from authority, and the removal of anger. But these 4 rituals are as good a place as any to start this project. I hope that you found this guide useful and that it encourages you to attempt Lunar Mansion rituals on your own if you haven't. And if you have, I hope I at least saved you some time looking for good astrological configurations. As I mentioned, this presentation is available for download and contains links to all the resources that I included in this video, and including my own guide to Lunar Mansion Magic, which talks about the concept of lunar mansions, the individual mansions themselves, and the components of the invocation conjuration rituals, plus includes an easy to print text version of the entire ritual for your convenience. In that guide, you will also find a link to a post about my experimental project syncretizing Lunar Mansion rituals with my personal Hecate practice and the full Hecate and Lunar Mansion invocation conjuration ritual that I use in my own workings. Here are the links to the other sources on lunar mansions, the links to purchase the items I mentioned in my rituals, and to my own guide on Lunar Mansion Magic. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I hope that it provided some value. I'll be back again in a few weeks with another monthly mansion magic guide video for January of 2022 with more new times and rituals. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like and subscribe button, which will help me get this video in front of more people like you and help you stay informed of when I post new content. And if you have any kind of feedback or questions about lunar mansions or magic in general, please hit me up on Twitter at postmuggleism. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.